The galactic convergence station hummed with the quiet electricity of 1,000 civilizations coexisting in careful, diplomatic tension. Species from 47 known star systems moved through its corridors, tall, spindly Vorthians with their bioluminescent crests, the heavy-footed Duroc whose footsteps shook the floor plates, and the elegant, silver-furred Seal Kai who moved like liquid starlight. Every being aboard was acutely aware of the unspoken rules: don't stare, don't touch, don't intervene in another species' affairs. Mara Ellison didn't care much for unspoken rules. She was a xenobiological field medic assigned to the station's emergency response unit, one of only 6 humans on the entire installation. Humans were still new here, a young species only recently admitted to the Convergence's lower diplomatic tiers. Most aliens regarded them with polite curiosity, the way one might admire an unusual insect. Occasionally brave. Occasionally baffling. Almost always doing something that defied rational expectation. Today would be no different. Mara was crossing the open atrium of the Commerce Ring, a vast domed space where vendors and merchants from dozens of species traded goods under artificial sunlight, when she heard it. Or rather, when she felt it. A small, hollow sound. Like wind through a cracked bone. She stopped walking. Around her, hundreds of beings continued their business. The Seal Kai delegation haggled in melodic tones. A trio of Duroc merchants argued loudly over cargo manifests. No one else had paused. No one else had noticed. Mara turned toward the sound. Tucked between the base of a vendor stall and a structural support column, barely visible in the shadow, was a tiny shape. She crossed to it in 4 quick strides and crouched down. Her breath caught. It was a Keth cub, a child of the Keth species, who resembled nothing so much as a small, luminous cat with iridescent fur that shifted from deep violet to gold depending on the angle of light. The Keth were a reclusive, proud people, deeply suspicious of outsiders and fiercely protective of their young. Their cubs rarely appeared in public spaces, and when they did, they were always accompanied. This one was alone. And it was collapsing. The cub, Mara would later learn, lay on his side, his small chest heaving in irregular, shuddering pulses. His iridescent fur had gone almost entirely gray, drained of color. His 4 delicate limbs were curled inward. His eyes, large and amber-bright, were open but glassy, tracking nothing. "Oh no," Mara whispered. She opened her field scanner without thinking, pressing it toward the cub's torso. The readout scrambled. Keth biology wasn't fully cataloged in the human database, but she caught enough: cardiac arrhythmia, oxygen saturation collapsing, core temperature dropping fast. The cub whimpered. The sound was barely audible. By now, a small ring of onlookers had formed, drawn not by the cub's distress, but by Mara's odd behavior. A human crouching in the Commerce Ring, pointing a device at a Keth cub. Several beings exchanged uncertain glances. A Vorthian trader near the edge of the crowd shook his crested head subtly, a gesture that meant don't interfere. Mara was already interfering. "Hey," she said softly, setting her scanner down and carefully placing 2 fingers against the cub's sternum, feeling for the rhythm beneath. "Hey, little one. I've got you. I'm right here." A murmur went through the crowd. "That is a Keth youngling," someone said, loudly enough to be heard. "The human should not touch." "Someone find the Keth delegation," Mara said sharply without looking up. Her voice carried command like a current. "Now. Tell them Keth cub, Commerce Ring, level 4, collapsed. Go." There was a pause. Then the sound of hurrying feet. She returned her full attention to the cub. His name, she didn't know yet. She wouldn't learn it until later, wouldn't learn that he was called Kale Vera, that he was 4 years old in Keth terms, that he had slipped away from his family pod while his mother spoke to a merchant, that he had a known sensitivity to a compound present in certain commercial-grade air processors installed only last month on level 4. Right now, all she knew was that he was dying in front of her. She opened her med kit. Human-calibrated, mostly. But she had cross-species supplements, she always carried them. Her training included Keth basics. The species shared certain biological convergences with Earth felids, enough that some responses could be extrapolated. Enough was not the same as certain. She knew that. She did it anyway. I'm going to help you breathe, she told Kale Vera quietly, as though he could understand her. Maybe he could. Keth cubs were known to be linguistically perceptive even before formal language training. This might feel strange. Don't be scared. She tilted his small head gently, clearing his airway. She positioned her hands with practiced steadiness and began chest compressions, modified, lighter than she'd use on a human child, adjusting for the smaller frame and what she guessed about Keth rib density. She counted under her breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. The human is touching the cub. Someone stop her. If the Keth see this, she's going to hurt it. The voices came from all directions, taut with alarm and cultural discomfort. Among the gathered species, physical contact with another's young was, at best, a serious diplomatic transgression. At worst, it was cause for war. Mara heard every word. She kept her hands moving. 30 compressions. Then she shifted, breathed 2 puffs of air, carefully calibrated volume. She'd done the math in about 2 seconds, calculating his lung capacity from the scanner readout, into his tiny muzzle, watching his small chest rise. Kale Vera's body shuddered. Then his fur flickered. Just barely. A tiny wash of gold moving across the gray. Come on, Mara breathed. Come on. She repeated the cycle. Compressions. Breaths. Compressions again. The crowd had grown very quiet. A heavy Duroc merchant near the front stood with his arms crossed, watching with an unreadable expression. A Vorthian counselor had pressed forward to see better, her crest fully raised, a sign of acute attention. Even the Seal Kai delegation, usually impeccably composed, had turned as one to watch the human woman kneeling on the floor of the commerce ring with both hands on a Keth child, counting softly to herself, refusing to stop. On the 47th compression of the second cycle, Kale Vera coughed. It was a small, wet, desperate sound that might have been the most beautiful thing Mara had ever heard. His chest began to rise and fall on its own. Irregular at first, then finding a rhythm. His fur flooded with color, violet surging back from his spine outward, gold lighting up his paws and the tip of his tail. His large amber eyes focused, slowly, on Mara's face. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he made a sound, a low, resonant trill, almost like a question. Yeah, Mara said softly, exhaling a shaky breath she hadn't known she was holding. Yeah, you're okay. You're going to be okay. She heard a commotion at the edge of the crowd, urgent, rapid Keth vocalizations, the sound of beings parting to make way. Within seconds, an adult Keth female broke through the ring of onlookers at a dead run, her fur blazing amber with distress, 2 Keth security officers behind her. She stopped when she saw Mara. She stopped when she saw Kale Vera, small, breathing, beginning to lift his head. The mother, Sarah Vera, her name was, though Mara didn't know it yet, made a sound that had no translation in any human language. It was grief and relief and fury and gratitude layered over each other in a single cry. She dropped to her knees beside her son, gathering him carefully, pressing her face to his. Kale Vera trilled again. He reached one small paw toward his mother's face. Then he looked back at Mara. Mara sat back on her heels, let out a long breath, and realized her hands were shaking. Sarah Vera raised her head. Her amber eyes met Mara's brown ones across the small distance between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. The entire atrium was silent. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species stood without moving, watching the human and the Keth mother look at each other. Then Sarah Vera said something. Her voice was low, deliberate, and she chose standard galactic, the trade tongue, not Keth, not private. Public. Intentional. You touched my son, she said. Yes, Mara said simply. She didn't apologize. Didn't explain. Just met the mother's gaze steadily. Sarah Vera was quiet for another moment. Then she pressed one hand, four-fingered, silver-furred, flat against her own chest. It was a Keth gesture. Mara had read about it once. It meant, I see you. I acknowledge what you have done. I will not forget. Neither will I, Mara said softly. Behind her, she heard the Durek merchant exhale slowly. She heard the Vorthian counselor say something to her aide in a low, odd tone. She heard the Sealkai delegation begin speaking again in their liquid harmonics, and from what she knew of their language, she caught one repeating phrase. The human did not hesitate. She gathered her med kit and stood up, knees stiff from the floor, hands still faintly trembling. She ran a self-check, cub breathing, color restored, mother present, situation stable. She looked down at Kale Vera one more time. He was watching her with those wide amber eyes, his small tail curled around his mother's wrist. He trilled once more. Quiet, certain, directed entirely at her. She didn't know the word. She would ask a Keth translator later. She would learn that what he said, the first real word he ever spoke in his life, on a station floor in the commerce ring with alien eyes watching from every direction, meant, in the closest approximation any standard galactic dictionary could offer. Safe. Mara Ellison clipped her med kit shut, nodded once to Sarah Vera, and walked back into the crowd. Behind her, the atrium began to breathe again. But no one who had been there would forget what they had seen, a human woman, alone and uninvited, kneeling on the floor of a place that did not belong to her, saving a life that no one else had moved to save. Because that was what humans did. They didn't calculate the diplomatic risk. They didn't wait for permission. They just got on their knees, and they did not stop.